Welcome to the castle, everybody. This is Night Saber Z42, and today I'm finally going to review the Humblewood setting campaign, or Humblewood campaign setting, by the deck of many. So this is something that I've actually helped back on Kickstarter a long time ago. And, well, I will show you. I had actually backed it, and I actually got the, I wouldn't say the starter set, it's the setting set. It wasn't the highest tier, it was the next highest tier, and it came with, like, the maps and, just a lot of different things. Actually, it's been a while since I've actually taken a look at this. So you've got tokens for all of the creatures that are included. You've got the maps, the spell cards, the holographic spell cards, by the way, which is actually pretty sweet. And in addition to that, I actually got some of the miniatures that came with it. The only one I did not get was the aspect of fire. And I had every intention of running through this, and then my 5th edition group kinda dissolved. One of our players went overseas, and we haven't really picked it up since. And I've actually found a nice group of players to play this with me on Roll20. So today I'll actually show you the PDF of the actual book itself. I will also show you what's in the Roll20 version, just very quickly. And yeah, let's get right into it. So the actual Humblewood setting, I've never really been, well, I can't really say I've never really been a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons, because I've played it. I wasn't such a super fan of 5th edition, let's just say. By the time that my group kind of dissolved, I was getting a little bit tired of, you know, your standard fantasy tropes. And then I heard about this, and you can already tell that it's a lot different than your standard 5th edition or D&D fantasy setting. Everybody is an anthropomorphic animal. You have birds, and you have humble folk, which are like the mammals. Like you'll see deer, you'll see raccoons and mice, and everything is just fresh and brand new. And to me, that's what I really needed. And so I went in all this with every bit of hoping to play it, and I've not been able to play it like in real life, but only through Roll20. And we've just finished the campaign like yesterday. So I will go through my thoughts on that one as well. So here we are, the Humblewood campaign setting from Hit Point Press, the Deck of Many. And you can still buy this, everything basically, from the deckofmany.com. And they've been releasing Humblewood version 2, which is an extension, just like new races and new lands to go to. They've been releasing that steadily for their Kickstarter backers, just as a preview of what's to come. So here we go. We have 4 different chapters, an introduction to what's new. You have a section on the religion, the different areas in the Humblewood itself, and then you have the adventure, which is broken down into 5 parts. At the very end of the book, you have the Bestiary and the NPCs, as well as some new magical items and the random encounter stuff. So let's go through it bit by bit. So I'm not going to go as in-depth on this one as I normally would, because there's a whole lot to get through. But I will say I absolutely love the artwork for this entire setting. Everything that they've ever put out, I've always loved. And it's just because it takes something like this and it just makes it cute, I guess, in a way. I'm not really one for cute things, but look at this little guy with a wizard hat and a little bell hanging out the end. That's so cute. A little strig dude. All right. So we get a introduction to what you can find in the wood. These are your these are 5 of your new starting races. These are the bird folk. Sorry, the bird folk. Your bird people, basically. You have a Luma, which are your pigeons. You have the Corvum, which are your ravens and crows. The Raptors, um, Gallus. Think of peacocks and roosters and chickens, and Strigs, which are like your owls. And you have your humble folk, which there's 5 of them. Vulpins are foxes, mapox, raccoons, gerbeens are little tiny creatures like mice, hedges tend to be like hedgehogs, and servants, which are like your deer. And each one of these races, by the way, have different varieties. So let's say that I am a servant, but I want to be like a moose person. That definitely fits under the servant. And there's like guidelines under each of the races as to what animals are represented, or like what animals would look, or what those looks would be for that specific race. So you get a nice little blurb about the bird folk and the humble folk, but um, basically there's a little bit of dissension between the two factions. Well, they're not really faction, but between the two races. And the way that I played it in my game, I definitely played it on the lines of civil rights. There's a huge division between the humble folk and the bird folk. The bird folk kind of control everything. They have their own council, and they kind of make the rules, and the humble folk kind of just live underneath them. And so that seems to be a big focus for the first part of the campaign in this book. So you have the actual stats for each of the races, and I really like that they threw in a lot of new stuff. So like your birds, they can't fly. They can glide, and some of them can actually propel themselves up into the air and then glide down from that. So like with the Gallus, they have the wing flap ability. As a bonus action, you can use your powerful feathered arms to propel yourself upwards a distance equal to half your movement speed. And then you can, after that, you can like glide down. So they can't fly. They've kind of lost that power a long time ago. But each of the races here are varied. Some of them even have sub races, which also kind of change some of the things that they can do. And the artwork, oh my gosh, it's just so gorgeous. Your Lumas are kind of like your spellcasters. They have innate spellcasting abilities. I just love that little face, that little derpy face. Oh, look at me, I have a dagger, I'm gonna stab you. Oh. The Raptors are like your eagles, your bird of praise. They're more of like your hunters and rangers. They're built for rangers. Not that you actually have to play it that way, and they come in 2 varieties. Your Strigs are like your owl people. And I think these are size. There are some small creatures, and there are also some medium creatures, which I'm very thankful there's a bit of a mix. So here's our first humble folk. We have the servants, which are like your deer, pronghorn and grove. This is very interesting. They have antlers for the pronghorns. And hedges are like your little hedgehogs, which actually, out of all of the races represented here, the hedges, I think, have like the most unique ability. So they have spiny quills, as a hedgehog does, and they can actually use that, use their spiny quills to actually inflict harm on anybody that attacks them, like with melee. Unfortunately, they can't wear armor, but in one of the supplemental materials that Humblewood they've released, the hedges actually get, or there's an actual quill cloak that you can buy, and if a hedge wears it, it actually increases the amount of damage they can do, which with their quills if somebody attacks them, which is actually really cool. And you got your gerbeens, which are like your mice people. They're small. There's not really a whole lot to them, by the way. It's just like this one page. And then the mapox, which are like your tinkerers. a lot of the bandits in this campaign are also Mapoks, so they're kind of also like your thief type characters or thief type races. But yeah, look at that little guy. I don't know how he's keeping that those nails in there with his tongue sticking out like that, but whatever. And then Volpins, your cunning fox people. There also isn't a whole lot to them as well, just one sub race. And there you go, more beautiful artwork, drinking that wine. And then, of course, they explain that how different bird folk and humble folk can look. You got your random height and weight charts, ages, and they also have their own. Well, each of the races kind of have their own language, but they all speak bird folk, which kind of tells you that the bird folk kind of rule everything. But they also have their own script, which I found very interesting, especially since one of the, well, it's not really a puzzle, but one of the handouts that you can give your players is written in this script, and it doesn't have anything to do with the story, but my players spent a good half hour just like deciphering it. And it was more like a drink more Ovaltine moment kind of deal. There are some new class options for the bard, the fighter, cleric, or just the, yeah, there we go, fighter, cleric, and the bard. So the new class options, the bard has the College of the Road. So they are travelers, they wander around, they tell their stories, and it's very interesting. A very interesting new subclass, and I think one of my players actually is using this one. And you know, they just like to travel around and tell stories and stuff like that. The cleric has the community domain, which gets some new spells. There are some new spells in this setting as well, which the community domain actually utilizes. There's also the knight domain. The fighter gets the Scofflaw, which are just dirty fighters. They like to, they're very cunning, and they like to hit them where it hurts in the least moment, or the moment when they least expect it, when you least expect it. So for new backgrounds, there's the Bandit Defector, the Grounded, and the Wind Touched. And so in this setting, there's a faction called the Tenders, and they've also released supplemental material for the Tenders as well. So if your players want to be like a Tender, which are basically like druid people, they look after the Humblewood forest and all of that, there's also backgrounds for that as well. There's also some new feats that you can use, which are, I didn't really see any that stood out to me too much. There are some that just kind of make the newer stuff a little bit better, like the Heavy Glider. You may glide while holding a heavy weapon and wearing heavy armor as long as you aren't encumbered. So things like that. And then you have your new spells. There's quite a few number of new spells, like Ambush Prey, Elevated Sight, which is really interesting. So like you summon this eye up into the sky and you can look around. It kind of reminds me of the Eye of Sauron for some reason, but yeah. Feathered Reach, the Globe of Twilight, Gust Barrier, invoke the Amaranthine. The Amaranthine are the gods of this setting. You can shape plants, the Spiny Shield. When you cast this spell using a spell slot above first level, increase the spell's effect by an additional 1d4. So when you get hit, the barrier the barrier reduces the damage you are dealt by 2d4 and deals the same amount of piercing damage to the attacker, which is very interesting. It's kind of like what the Hedge's Quills can do, just in shield form. Stellar Bodies, Veil of Dusk. And I must mention, by the way, the spell cards for all of these spells are holographic, which is very cool. So like you move them around and they actually, like, you move the cards around and the image moves. It's really cool. I really like that. All right, and then we have the religion of the wood. So we have the Amaranthine, and they kind of make a very big distinction that there's bird folk Amaranthine and humble folk Amaranthine, but sometimes the humble folk would kind of change Ardia's appearance to better match their own appearance. So things like that can actually change depending on who you are. So you get a list of all the Amaranthine. So Ardia is basically like the main goddess, the creator, while Titan deals with death and the eventuality of all things. Lawful neutral, he is not evil by any means. Altus, domain of war and tempest. Cluran, which is actually two different forms of the same person. They are the tricksters. One is white, one is black, and they like to trick people. They are also magic based or magically inclined. And Gesme, the raven god of the forge. And most of these, or at least the bird folk, they have an interesting story of how they came to be part of the Amaranthine, because before they were actually just normal mortals who accomplished some great feat that attracted Ardia and Titan, and then they molded the people after these specific people who became the Amaranthine. You have Hanera, who's the nature and community domain, lawful good, and Reina, chaotic neutral, nature and tempest. And then we have the Humblewood Amaranthine, so Kareth, which is awesome, reminds me of Rainbow Deer from Pokemon X and Y. Gaspard, a couple of my players believe in Gaspard, a very noble knight type person. Hath, trick, or the knight domain, cunning and crafty. He's a little raccoon god. Henwin, nature. Kren, your trickery, evil god, who's actually had bouts with Gaspard, I believe. And then we have the Tales of the Amaranthine. So how did the world come to be? And then you have a tale for each of the birdfolk Amaranthine of how they came to be part of the Amaranthine. So before they were normal people who became Amaranthine, and then the rest of the birdfolk were molded around that specific Amaranthine. So that's how the different races came to be. My only critique of this one is that they only focus on the bird folk. They did not include any of the humble folk Amaranthine. And I would have really liked to have seen something that kind of, signifies how the humble folk came to be, or how they actually share this world with the bird folk. But then again, that's left to the DM's interpretation, I suppose. By the way, I've had to kind of fill in a lot of gaps in this setting with my own stuff, which I'll actually show you about that towards the end of the video. You got a nice spread of the actual map. And then you have all of the different places. So Alderheart is the main hub. That's where everybody lives. It's the biggest city in Humblewood. You've got Ash Barrow, which is kind of destroyed. The Avium, which is a magic college for those magically inclined. It's where if you want to be a wizard, Harry, you go to college there. You go to school there. Bracken Mill, a nice little town that you might go to. Marshview, Meadowfen, which is where the campaign starts in Meadowfen. I would really love this. This is Salthurst Port. And then you get some information on Scorched Grove and the different types of, or the different areas. Some of these regions, like Mockfield, have their own random encounters table, which is located towards the end of the book. And a lot of these locations do have their own maps that you can find online. People have actually been making maps like for, I think Saltar's Port is one of the maps I've seen floating around. And some of the maps are actually included in the book, like Winnowing Reach and stuff like that. And then chapter 4 is the actual adventure in of itself. And boy, do I have some critiques for this one. My main critique, before we get started, and this kind of follows along the same lines of every D&D product out there. There is just a wall of text, of information, okay, that as a DM you're going to want to read through. Some of it, most of it actually, is not even required reading. Like, there's a lot of fluff text, and even though that they definitely puts the more important things in different colors, like blue, red, green, stuff like that, not everything is color coded. There are some useful information that is actually just hidden in the middle of a paragraph that isn't color coded. And so towards the end of this book, when I actually started using the PDF on my computer for the actual campaign itself, you'll start seeing highlighted text. That's the information that I found relevant that my players would need to know, or that I might need to know, that isn't actually highlighted as a different color. So let's get onto it. This adventure is broken into 5 different parts, and usually at the end of each part you gain a level. Although there's one in particular part where you level up in the middle of the adventure or the part, and it was really weird. So I guess the pacing isn't all that great. So the adventure begins in a little sleepy town called Meadowfen, and you witness not a traveler, but an explorer who was sent to Ash Barrow to see what was up with the cloudy smoke, or the smoke in the sky. And they tell you some bad news. The Ash Barrow has been destroyed. There are strange creatures all about. And so your characters are sent to go to Alderheart to inform the council. Along the way, they meet some bandits, and they actually end up rescuing Eliza and Alluran. Now, if that does not sound familiar, it's because the Allurans are actually not part of the Humblewood setting. That's kind of weird when I say it that way. What I mean is the Allurans are not an included race in Humblewood. They're, I guess, an extra race that they have made that they are going to put in the next book, which I'm kind of on the fence about this one. I don't understand why they would do that. But at the same time, I'm glad they did, because that opens up your world a little bit more. At the same time, I just wish they would have included the damn thing in the actual book, but there you go. So Eliza is a cat person who looks just like this. She is a traveling merchant who's going to Alderheart. Hey, isn't that where you're going? Hey, let's go ahead and travel together. They soon get to Winnowing Reach, and if the players explore around, they'll eventually meet the magistrate, who informs them that, hey, you can't go to the council without a writ or something like that. So let me give you this quest so I can give you this letter here, and now you can get into the council. So here is my biggest critique with this entire adventure. That right there, what I just told you, I don't mind that you would have to see a magistrate to get an item to basically be granted an audience with the council that you're trying to get in to see. And I mean, you don't have to see the magistrate. There's actually an alternative way to going to see the council. But my main critique is he gives you a quest. Find the missing researcher down south in the mock fields, rescue her from the slimes, and bring her back. Okay, I have no problem with that. And the first time I ran this, my group of 2 players, one being my wife, did not actually have any problem with that either. The main problem is what he does next. Oh, you saved the person that I sent you to find. Well, guess what? I want you to go kill a witch now. So go kill her, and then I'll give you the letter I promised you in the first place. When my wife actually heard that, she actually rage quit right then and there. So I actually cut this out of my own campaign game because it made no sense at all. It's just a waste of time. The actual reason why you would run this encounter instead of the other one is because of the character you actually meet, which in of itself is a great risk because you are sent to kill this witch. This witch is actually a very important character way later in this adventure. So I would actually only use one of these. If you use the swamp witch, though, be prepared to work in some things, because if your players actually end up killing it, you're going to have to think of something creative to do further down the line. And they also miss out on this really cool item called the Nest Charm, which my players absolutely love. Basically, it's a little acorn that you plant into the ground, and it grows into a tree platform that you can rest on. And you can use it every day, basically. Okay, so you've gotten the special letter that will allow you to see the council. All right, well, you make it to Alderheart eventually. You'll have some encounters along the way, and then you actually make it to Alderheart, which I actually love this picture. If you've ever seen the Final Fantasy XII concept art, this reminds me exactly of that. So you finally make it to Alderheart. If you have the letter, you can go and see the council right away and make your case. If not, then you have to do another quest to basically see the council, or just wait in line like a good person. Eliza will set up her shop, which you can buy some stuff from. Some magic items, very rare that she'll have those, but she's also got some other things, that she'll have. There's the council, Beta, the council speaker. You're going to want to go ahead and create the rest of the council as well. I basically just wrote a bird folk representative for each of the races. And then, of course, Alderheart is attacked. And then you lead a actual encounter against that specific camp just a couple miles away. So you beat them up. They retreat. They go back into their lair, which is up in the mountains. So you go there, and you basically, you can either fight your way through, or you could sneak your way through. My players actually snuck their way through, which was very interesting. And then you have an encounter with Benna, the bandit leader, who's actually got some pretty cool backstory. Actually, hold on. I might have actually created that backstory. Never mind. And so you can either convince her to go with you, or you can kill her. And there are repercussions for each. And this is something that I actually find to be a strong point of this adventure. They actually give you repercussions for things. So they have things like, if Benna was captured, if you captured Benna, then this happens. If Benna was reasoned with, then this happens. If you killed Benna, then this happens. And that kind of actually plays a part in further chapters. So even further down the line, if you killed Benna, then this might happen further down the line. Or even other important NPC characters, if this person was killed, then this can happen. Or if you save this person or reason with them, then this happens. Or if they escape, then you have to go on another quest to basically recapture them. And I'll actually point that out when I get there. So you either kill Benna or you capture her, and now you are dubbed the Defenders of Alderheart. Yay! Rejoice. As you probably have not noticed, you actually don't gain a level after this. You gained a level way back here after you defeat the bandits. Yeah, this is one of those weird, I don't know, the pacing is just kind of weird right here. So you go from one fight to another. I think I might have actually given my players that third level here at the end of this one. But they do get a pretty cool sword if they remember to pick it up, the Blade of the Wood, which is actually a magic weapon, which is kind of useful, as you should know as a DM. Okay, so on to part 3, an urgent summons. This is your introduction to the Tenders, the druidic faction of the of Alder, or basically of Humblewood. And in this one, you are tasked with helping two of the tenders, Tever and Havel, which my players absolutely love. One of them ends up going off on his own to the Scorched Grove, and you're tasked with saving him. There are some encounters that you can meet on the way, but then you get there and you meet this bad boy, the Ash Snake, your very first Ash Snake. A very large creature that likes to dig underneath the ash and will actually come up and wreck your day. So you deal with the Ash Snake, and then something happens. A mountain appears. A fiery mountain appears, and it begins to move. This is the aspect of fire, and this is your player's introduction to the real threat. So those bandits you just took care of, they're either going to start helping you out, or you're going to be in some very big trouble. So if you reasoned with Benna, then she basically turns her bandits into another mercenary faction that helps Alderheart. If you killed her, then the bandits are still going to be a presence in the wood, and you'll have to deal with that as well. All right, so you gain level 4 after you flee from the aspect of fire, and it will actually chase you towards the woods and start burning stuff. Okay, so now you are tasked with finding out what is the aspect of fire. So you go to the avium where all knowledge is kept in Humblewood, and you are tasked with basically investigating anything into the aspect of fire. But of course, on the way there, you might meet the remnants of some of the bandits. I didn't include any of this because they had already killed them. Kral was actually a second faction of bandits that was really terrifying. He actually led the attack on Alderheart, but they dealt with him. But there's other things that you can encounter along the way, and this is actually at the end of the book as well, if I'm not mistaken. So you get to the avium and you meet with the librarian and the dean, and you are tasked with investigating the aspect of fire. But your players will quickly realize that there's information missing from some of the tomes. So now your players are tasked with figuring out why there's information missing, where is it, what's happening, and why are they being attacked? Because there's an encounter in here where their shadows will actually come up and start attacking them. And that was a really cool encounter. I really enjoyed that. So this whole section is just a big whodunit mystery, and the chapter kind of just details the information that you can find, how to go about it in the investigation, when to plug things in, when to make things happen, and they're kind of being led to the great reveal. By the way, this is the thing that my players took half an hour to decipher. I really don't know why they wanted to do that. I can't even remember what this says, actually. But they really wanted to know what these runes spelled out. So eventually, your players will discover that the librarian is the main culprit, and he's actually Aldwald in disguise. Who is Aldwald, by the way? Well, he's actually a noble who actually freed the aspect of fire in the first place months ago, and he's been looking for a way to basically recapture, well, not capture the aspect, but basically to destroy the aspect of fire. How does he go about it? By the way, he created something called the Cobblefright, a big, ginormous bird skeleton monster thing that would siphon the energy right out of anybody and anything, including the aspect of fire. So there's that. After defeating the Cobblefright and either killing Oddwald, apprehending him, or allowing him to escape, this part of their research is done. Now, of course, if Aldwald escapes, they're going to have to go on a fairly lengthy side quest to go ahead and get him back. If he was slain, then there are some other things that you can do. The Dean will most likely step in. And if Aldwald was apprehended, then you can proceed on to the rest of the main quest. So the last part of the adventure ends with the big showdown with the aspect of fire. Well, part of the information that they would have uncovered would have happened to be about something called the Borealis, which is an ice staff. And the aspect of fire can only be basically destroyed with ice and the reversal summoning spell that created him in the first place, of which Aldwald is the person who summoned it, sort of. It's kind of weird that way. Aldwald knows how to seal him back up, basically. So if you killed him, well, you're going to have to find somebody else to do that for you. Also, you're going to die if you do that. So whoever you pick is going to have to sacrifice himself. Good luck convincing somebody to do that. So if Aldwald escaped, you'd have to track him down. He goes all the way to a little local town called Bracken Mill. He tries to disguise himself, and this is another weak point in the whole story. He basically is caught. He runs away. And instead of for atoning, because he atones quite easily. So this is just a way to needlessly prolong the adventure more than it needs to be, in my opinion. You're either gonna kill him or you're going to capture him. I mean, it's nice that they included him escaping, but it's just needlessly prolonging the inevitable. And it's just another mystery of who's Aldwald in this case, because he can disguise himself. So if you actually captured him, he'll give you a little bit of his backstory. Riffin, one of the NPCs that helped you in the bandit camp, is actually a good friend of his, and if they meet, they kind of have this whole scene where they cry in each other's arms. I missed you. I thought you were dead, kind of thing. Oh wait, that was just in my game. Never mind. So either way, you have Aldwald in your hands, and you need to find out where the summoning circle that summoned the aspect of fire in the first place, where it is. So you go to Susan the Seer. Now, Susan is that witch that was all the way back in chapter 1. So if you killed her, well, you're going to have to find somebody else to divinate where that summoning circle is. So if you use that part of the story, if you use that side quest, you're going to want to make sure that Susan is alive. So this is actually where I started highlighting things that are very much relevant to what you're trying to do. So Susan will actually divinate what you need to do next, which I guess is fine. I mean, there really isn't any way other than that than to say, oh, you're going to have to find a lost ritual site of the Tenders where the Borealis is kept. Although I kind of really wish they had come up with something else other than, somebody divining up the future that way. So, the 2 Tenders that you discovered in chapter 2, I believe, if they are dead, then you're going to have to find somebody else to kind of help you along that way. If they're alive, they will help you. So you go to this ritual site, you solve a riddle, which my players took forever to actually discover. So the cycle of nature is death, rebirth, force to ashes and ashes to earth. Stand in the compass and your proof there deliver. To the cleanser of forest, the sapling's life giver. It's talking about fire. So you basically put this leaf, this special leaf, onto a pedestal of representing fire. That's it. I tried to go through it at some really complicated ways, but hey, they eventually got there. So who am I to complain? So they go inside of the ritual site of the Tenders, and they have some encounters. They fight guardians. They go through a really cool blazing bridge that they have to dodge. And yeah, look at all this stuff that I actually had to highlight just to make things. And of course, some of the other stuff is fluff text. I kind of really wish that they would just give me bullet points of things that are relevant and just have the fluff text as extras. And then the last part is they fight this guardian of the ritual site, the Oak Heart. And man, did he wreck my players. But then again, this really serves as a segue to fighting the main boss of the campaign. So they're going to fight this really hard mini boss and kind of prepare them, because this guy is actually really testing them to see if they are worthy of holding the Borealis. So they beat him up, they get the Borealis, and now it's time for the final showdown. And usually the book tells you to go back to Alderheart and have a talk with Oddwald, and he'll kind of guide them to the summoning circle. But I kind of skipped all that because I didn't want to prolong this any more than I needed to. So I had Oddwald, being accompanied by the Dean, teleport right to where they were because something happened. The aspect showed off his true form, or at least that's what it was in my game. He went from a big mountain to being a gigantic beast of fire. And so he was actually going towards Alderheart, and the players needed to somehow distract him to come back to the summoning circle so they could take care of it. So your players fight the aspect of fire, hopefully defeating it with ice. And if Oddwald is alive, he will actually sacrifice himself to send the elemental back to his plane of existence. If not, you're going to have to find somebody else to do that for you, or one of your players, if they're magically inclined, could also sacrifice themselves. So there you go. Of course, you don't get a level after that whole ordeal. You actually gained a level, 5th level at the end of part 4, I believe. But I gave my players up to level 6 here because season 2 is gonna kick their butt. And then, of course, there's a nice little epilogue, and you could either leave things off there or you could continue it. And of course, I am choosing to continue it with my own way, which is still in development, but they're basically going to have to fight some sort of aspect of ice in a way, which is actually going to be Oral from Icewind Dale, which is going to be like an adaptation of Icewind Dale, but it's going to be so different in many ways. So that is kind of it for that whole campaign. There's some really good ups and there's some really bad downs that I had to fix. But then again, that's kind of the same thing with like all adventure modules. You're gonna have to make it your own. The writers of these adventures can only do so much. I just kind of wish they used a little bit more common sense, especially with like the magistrate in chapter 1. I mean, needlessly adding a second side quest just so they can get an introduction to another character that they may or may not kill, because if they kill her, well, there goes the reason for that side quest. All right, so then you have your appendixes. You have the Bestiary. So every new creature that is mentioned in this book has their own stats. Some are very terrifying, and some of them are just kind of used if you plan on running your own stuff. So I'm really glad they included things like the Birdfolk skeletons, which I haven't used. Got the Ember Bats, which are used, Forest Prowlers, Lesser Demons, which just it reminds me of that one episode of SpongeBob SquarePants where he's got the bad breath episode where he makes that weird breakfast concoction and he's got bad breath for like the entire rest of the episode. It's easy like Sunday morning. Got mountain lions, which is really cool, and like 3 different slimes for that part of the adventure. You have a wake worm, which if you have if they want to sail the sea, if you want to have your players sail the seas, this would be a really cool monster to include there. Challenge rating 6, but it is what it is. And then you have non-player characters, so things that you might need like dockmasters, militia, guards, people, farmers, sailors, skirmishers, just different types of people. You have bandit generals. There's the different type of servant that you can be, a moose person, priests. You have diviners, assassins. So anything that you think you might need is actually fairly represented here, and I'm really thankful for that. Like they're not used in the actual adventure by any means, but I'm really glad they included it because when I'm planning for further adventures, um, I can plug in these little seeds in, or like these characters into it. And something that I didn't show off, I was kind of playing with on camera. So I have these reference cards, and these reference cards are really cool. I got these through the Kickstarter campaign, but like take this one. This is the Nest Charm, and it actually tells you what it does on the back. So you don't actually have to flip through the back of the book to actually get this stuff. I could just use these cards and just look and just keep it behind my DM screen. And of course, you also have the new spells as well. These are the non-holographic spell cards. I actually have the holographic ones. I actually didn't know the spells were going to be in the set, so there is also that. So pretty cool thing to have, actually. You've also got a very basic explanation of the tenders, but there's a supplemental PDF that has been released for Kickstarter backers that explains the tenders in more depth, as well as their rankings and how to ascend in their ranks. So if you have somebody who is a tender, they will know how to actually level up their rankings and stuff like that. And then you have information on creating NPCs, because each of the different races is quite different from each other. There are things that you would give them, certain NPCs. So if I take like an NPC from the monster manual, like a commoner, let's just say, I want to make him into a Corvum commoner, I would just do all of this here. I would give him 2 to the intelligence score and just do stuff like that. So I can have different NPCs. I can have varied NPC classes that are the same, if that makes any sense. And they go through each of the different races. And then you have your new magic items, and there's actually newer magic items in a supplemental material that was released to Kickstarter backers, which are actually really cool. And not all of these items that are in this book are mentioned in the adventure as well. Like this red feather bow wasn't mentioned. I don't think the wing crest shield was mentioned at all either. So it's good that they included a couple of things that, you know, are unique to the setting that you might find. And then, of course, you have your random encounters. And then at the end, yeah, I didn't use any of this. Use this helpful list to determine what a character might find when searching through a place in the wood or in the NPC's bag. Okay, I thought this was for the end of the adventure. Not bad. I didn't use this anyways. I probably would have, actually, because I think one of my players is a trinket freak, I think. Then again, he hasn't really looked for any trinkets at the end. And then, of course, you have your index and your list of your licensing in the back. So the PDF, the artwork is well done. The formatting and layout, not so much in my opinion, but then again, that's kind of my opinion with all D&D books, if I'm being quite honest. I just wish there was less fluff, more, you know, just give me the things that I need type of deal. All right, so then we have the Humblewood setting in Roll20. Let's go ahead and launch this. So just as you would expect, everything that is in the book is represented here, from all of the maps to the monsters, any handouts. The adventure itself is packed into handouts, which you can see here. So you don't really need to have the PDF or the book. All of the monsters and NPCs are represented here as well. So here you have all of your NPCs. Further down, you would have your monsters. And even some of the monsters that don't have pictures, I think that are included in the either the player's handbook or the monster manual. Actually, it's probably going to be the free stuff. So the base set also has stats here, in case you don't have any of that. So it's all represented here. All of the magic items have a nice handy PDF, so if you need to show them that blade of the wood that they got, you can show them that and they can see its stats. Although my preferred method is to, of course, look in the compendium itself, because all of this stuff is included here as well. So you could just drag this and drop it right into that character sheet and they would have the stats for it. All of the maps are, it's actually really cool. I'll show you. In the GM overlay, things are hidden. So let's say that you go to this page. They don't know exactly what's here yet. So you might start them off in location 6 and then eventually... Uh-oh, I just made things bad. I made it go poof. Should probably move that up. Oh, to the front. There we go. There you go. So they might actually start here, and then you can reveal it as you go along. Just make sure it doesn't go poof like that. Which is actually really cool. All of the maps, the battle maps, are have dynamic lighting. Just make sure that you remember to turn dynamic lighting on for your characters. Yeah, it's the actual new dynamic lighting too. This whole entire set is, I think, $49.99, but you do get quite a bit of stuff. And this works well with the 5th edition compendium, so anything that's here, you can actually include in your normal D&D games, although it would be, well, I guess the hedge cloak could make an appearance in a regular game, although it's not actually in this book, which is unfortunate, but oh well. But things like the Borealis is, the Wingcrest shield, so things like that are, I would definitely probably include in other normal fantasy, high fantasy type games. So, there's also some macros for rolling the different items at Eliza's, different random encounters, and what do they find. Got your rollable tables right here for forest encounters, cave encounters, just anything that has a rollable table inside of the book is actually represented here. And so the last thing I want to show you guys, so I did back this on Kickstarter, and there's more to just the book, which, by the way, the book isn't that great, mainly because there's a lot of pages, but the binding is glue bound, it's not stitch bound, so every time I try to close it, or every time I try to just have a book open, the pages kind of try to flip, especially towards the end of the book. So be aware of that. But there are actually some miniatures. These miniatures are actually really good. I can't actually show you because I actually haven't taken most of them out of the box. But I do have them all except for the aspect of fire. Okay, so you have your things like the boneyard birds, which are just the undead skeletons, like the cobblefright and the birdfolk skeletons, which aren't really used in the campaign, but I mean, if you go ahead and do your own thing, you can definitely have like some undead encounters. I have taken some of the miniatures out of this one. These are things like your Gallus, Strignite, Corvum, Necromancer, Luma Wizard, and Raptor Ranger. And the detail on all of these miniatures, by the way, are fantastic. Like, if I was a good painter, miniature painter, I would actually paint these, but I am not, so I am sorry. This one has the Bandit General, which is Benna, Vulpin Captain, Corvum Rogue, Mapak Bandit, and Drubean Thief. So your bandit coalition, basically. And then, of course, you have your terrifying beasts of the wood, which I would have loved to have plopped this down on my table, but I've never got to run this for reals. So you got things like your ash snake, your mountain lion, forest prowler, and some ember bats there if you decide to use them. So there you go. So some really cool miniatures are represented here. I use them for other things, oddly enough, for like Arkham Horror, which is kind of weird, but I love those miniatures, so I tend to use them for things that I would not. So that is actually going to be it for my review of the Humblewood. Is it worth $49.99 on Roll20? I think so. You can buy this book separately. You can also buy the PDF separately. You can buy all of that separately, and occasionally they're on sale too. So go to, I think, the Deck of Many to see what deals they have. And Humblewood 2 is coming out sometime. They haven't announced a Kickstarter yet, but they have been working because I've been getting emails about it for like quite some time. And the last, oh gosh, I forgot. I was going to show you my World Anvil for the my actual game. So this is my World Anvil, and yes, I do have a subscription to it, and it was well worth it. So what I have done, and consider this bonus content for this episode, so I have my map, and this is just something that I've shown my players. They have I've made up some new places like this Branched Perched. This is brand new. They were looking for a tavern, and I gave it to them, and I used a lot of the supplemental materials that I've already done reviews for, like the taverns and the shops. I've actually included those here, especially this place. The Old Mill is one of those places that from the what is that book called? Spectacular Shops and Their Wares. So I've been using materials like that to kind of flesh out my world a little bit. In addition to that, I have also been creating new races. So like if I go to the Tangle Wilds, my players have options like the Tigrin, which are a race of tiger people that they can become. I've got like all of their history right here and their traits, which are basically the same as the Tabaxi is what they're based off of. I've also got like the Itsu, which are bat people, the Lazartola, which is the lizard men. Tilia are the gecko people, which are actually in Humblewood 2. They're also mentioned in a supplemental material for shops. And you got the Wanti, because why not, and the Quayado, which are frog people. And so basically I'm just fleshing out more of the world. I'll include a link to my World Anvil in the description down below in case you're interested. But each of these regions is going to eventually have new player options for my players because in my campaign, we're actually going to go all over the world. Humblewood is just a small portion of Everden, which is the actual world that Humblewood resides in. And there's different biomes to go to, like Timber or like Tangle Wilds, which is a jungle region way down south. It's like a ginormous rainforest jungle area. So just kind of wanted to show you that in case you're a new Humblewood aficionado who's looking for extra stuff, you can come here and just feel free to steal some of this stuff. I don't mind. So thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to help out this series, and also subscribe if you would like to see more. I'm all about the sharing and caring. And I will see you guys in the next video.